This is the least prepared football team in the NFL. They've had 5 opening drives this season. They got 22 yards. So you mean to tell me an offense that has Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and one of the best offensive line in football and Saquon Barkley, they got 22 yards? In the NFL, how you finish games is really about players. How you start games is really about coaching.
Dan Orlovsky said this is the most unprepared team in the NFL. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Well, they're going to be underprepared because they got a couple of guys out. Dallas Goedert, Jordan Mailata, the Eagles injury report fresh. But there are some names that were on yesterday that are not on today. Giants missing a couple of guys as well. Well, let's bring in Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, which you can get on all podcasting platforms and their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds, Adam. Well, you heard Mr. Orlovsky there. This is the most unprepared team in football, and they're going to have to be shorthanded again, at least for a couple of weeks at left tackle. We'll see how long Goddard is out for, but, man, the vibes around this offense have not been good.
No, it's kind of weird. I know Dan a little bit. I mean, that's pretty strong to say that, but it is kind of embarrassing that you can't score a first-quarter point. We know the Eagles set a team record, an NFL record of scoring points in the second quarter 2 years ago. It was the strangest thing ever. Look, it's one thing if they were scoring 30, 35 points a game, but yet they wouldn't score in the first quarter. You go, all right, well, they got to start faster, but look, they're still scoring a lot, so who cares? It's not good. Mike, it's not good. And by the way, one correction on the injury report, just so you understand, like, the guys that don't have a game status, that doesn't mean their injury is going away. Like you said, these guys, they're still on the injury report. They just don't have a game status. They don't have an injury designation or a game status designation. This changed like 6 years ago. Players are rarely pulled off the injury report. That rarely happens. So, like Darius Slay, for instance, now we'll talk about Slay. He actually took all his reps today. He's expected to go. Now, they list him as questionable. I'm not sure why they do that. Mike, when they know he's going to play, like Milton Williams, for instance, he took all his reps. He doesn't have a game status. He's not listed as questionable, doubtful, or out. But the injury didn't go away. He's still listed with the ankle injury today, so just know that. So the only players they're not worried about Darius Slay. It would have to take a bad setback for him not to play, Mike, because when a player takes all his reps Friday, the guy's playing Sunday barring a setback.
Yeah, I mean, you got right now the only guys out are Goddard and Mailata and Byron Young. Yep. The questionables are Ricks and Slay. Yesterday, though, you saw Jalen Carter pop up on that list, and you were like, whoa, what's happening here? And now he's not even he did not appear. I do not see him on at all. No, he's a full guy today. So they caught a little break with that because yesterday you had Carter, Goddard, Mailata, Slay. You're thinking, okay, that's 2 key guys on defense. But things look better there. Sidney Brown, a full 2. So that's interesting as well. But the Eagles missing Mailata, Goddard, that is going to be obviously the big key there.
Yeah, couple things here that you should know, Mike. So the Eagles, if they want to activate Anais Smith, who came back from the ankle issue from at the end of August, or Sidney Brown, who had his ACL injury last January, they have till 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow to activate them. If not, they've got one more week. If they don't activate them in another week, they can't play this season. So we'll see. Like, what we have to understand is, Mike, when guys are out for a long period of time, particularly Sidney Brown, they need what's called a ramp-up period. Like, you can't bring him back after 3 days. Like, the only way you would do it, if they had a playoff game and you absolutely needed him, you could do that and just deal with it. But there was no reason to do that. So, someone on our, this is actually kind of comical. And this guy clearly was listening to our show. So, on our YouTube channel, where our comments are, because we had mentioned that if Anais Smith and Brown were brought back tomorrow and added to the active roster, the 2 guys likely to be released to make room would be Eli Ricks, who was healthy and active last week, and Byron Young. And wouldn't you know it, both went on the injury report this week. It's just coincidence. I just thought that was funny because that guy said it. Maybe these are phantom injuries. By the way, teams could get fined if the NFL catches them doing that. So you got to be careful with that. But we'll see what happens tomorrow. But by the way, we should mention, Mike, the Giants. Their injury report cleared up pretty well. They kind of surprised me. It didn't sound good earlier in the week, but they're going to have most of their guys.
Well, let's get into them because, the Eagles are without Jordan Mailata. That's one big injury for the Giants. They are missing their left tackle, and he is done for the year, Andrew Thomas. But the rest of their injuries kind of worked out well for them.
Yeah, talking to the Giants, this Josh Azudu, who's going to start for Andrew Thomas, he's really a guard right tackle, but they think he's so smart that he could play left tackle. He doesn't have the ideal size. He's under 6'5", but they really had high hopes for him. He's had two major injuries. One of them was an ACL. He spent his first two seasons. He would end his seasons on IR, so that's a problem. They're going to have a backup punter. They have a backup kicker going on. It's actually weird. The Eagles are going to face a left-footed punter for 2 weeks in a row, which is extremely rare. But yeah, the big one is Andrew Thomas, and we're going to see Malik Neighbors, Mike. He was terrific in training camp. They're a heavy 11 personnel team, so they're going to spread the Eagles out. This could be a game, Mike, where we see Cooper DeJean in coverage, where we didn't see him a lot last week, where he was a great blitzer. Let's see what happens, what he looks like in coverage.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a matchup that I'm interested in. Is Wan'Dale Robinson, kind of a slot guy, shifty, quick, against Cooper DeJean, big, more fit. Are those the kind of matchups that are better for him, or are those the ones that not the best matchups for him?
Well, Wan'Dale Robinson he does three things really well. He runs well after the catch. He could definitely handle reverses and orbit motion, stuff like that. And he's great with short area quickness. And that's the way that they use him. So you got him. He's a guy you're going to see a lot play inside. And by the way, Neighbors will line up inside. They move him everywhere. And Darius Slayton is their best deep threat, who, by the way, was drafted the same year with Daniel Jones. Now, their chemistry has been off and on down the field, but the Eagles really know Darius Slayton. He's had some big plays against them. I know Jalen Hyatt does next to nothing. He has one catch this season. Last year, he had some big catches. The guy could absolutely fly. And don't forget, they've got Theo Johnson, the tight end from Penn State, who's a pretty good athlete, a fourth rounder. So they've got a lot of talent. I know their offense is underachieved in the passing game, but they're going to get Devin Singletary back this week. They got Tyrone Tracy. It's going to be two-man backfield. We'll see what happens.
Adam Caplan, Football at 4, looking at Eagles-Giants, some of the injury news that is happening here. And, of course, the Eagles looking for, their offense to kind of get things in action here. It's going to be tough to do without both Mailata and Goddard. You heard some of the injury issues for the Giants here, but the Giants have some special teams problems as well.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, yeah, it's Matt Hawk, who's a veteran punter who is filling in for Jamie Gillen. Jamie Gillen, the Eagles know very well. He had that muffed punt a couple years ago at the Meadowlands. Graham Gano, their kicker, he's out. He's on injury reserve with a hamstring injury. Greg Joseph fills in, formerly of the Vikings, who's got a big leg. And even their punt returner, Gunnar Olszewski, he's out on injury reserve. The guy's filling in is really not that good. Amir Smith-Marset, who was drafted by the Vikings. It's kind of weird, like all these specialists out. But look, they're going to have, again, both injury reports have kind of cleared up, and both teams look like it's, I would say, the Eagles are in a little bit better shape, but the major injury, Eagles, you mentioned Goddard, him being out, they're going to do what they've always done, Mike. You're going to see Calcaterra, who's a factor. Grant Calcaterra, there's no question about it, is a good athlete, has best game as a pro. And then Fred Johnson now, who started earlier this season for Lane Johnson at right tackle, didn't go well, and now they're going to start him at left tackle.
Let's take a look, Adam, at the Giants and how they've, they're not – their defense is much better. Their offense still struggles. They've had some injuries, but is this a better Giants team than we've seen in the past?
But that's a good question. They're more talented than they have been. We just outlined that they're deeper at receiver. They've got speed. Offensive line's got issues. They're better in the interior because they addressed it. John Runyon Jr. coming over for the Packers on a big money deal. Azeez Ojulari, who's going to start at one of the edge spots for Thibodeau. So keep an eye on that. And Brian Burns, they expect him to go. He's got an injury. Dexter Lawrence, by the way, is terrific. Who's going to play? So they're I would say, Mike, their secondary is overachieving. They're not very talented there, but they're playing very well as a unit, and they're leading the NFL in sacks. So we know this is the key to me, Mike, is how do the Eagles handle the pressure this week? To me, that's the number one issue for them. is how do they handle it, and can they make plays without Goddard over the middle?
Well, one guy I wanted to ask about is Dexter Lawrence and the Eagles and how they match up there. What kind of plan could they have for him? Who you could make an argument, I guess, that without Aaron Donald here, he's probably the best guy in the league now at that position.
He's an unbelievable football player. They call him Sexy Dexy. It's kind of funny. Yeah, and Mike, look, it's never easy. He's a phenomenal football player. It's going to be a challenge. I'm fascinated to see, Mike, as you bring this up, how look, he's an interior player. He's not an outside pass rusher. So I don't know. You don't have to keep a tight end in, but do they slide? Are they going to use slide protection? How are they going to do this? It's a good question. We'll see. But it's a guy. Here's the thing, though, Mike. It's not like they've never gone against him. It's a guy that they absolutely know, and they can handle him. I mean, they've done a good job, by the way, over a series of years against him. It's not a guy they haven't faced before.
Yeah, well, no Kelsey, right? I mean, this will be Juergen's first real big test, I guess, having someone like this. You'll see if and Becton, by the way, right guard, he's new at that position, so we'll see how they kind of handle that and who has the, if Brian Burns is moving around and he's lined up over Fred Johnson, I'm sure that's something that the Eagles are not looking forward to either.
It's going to be, look, Mike, it's going to be a challenge. We can't underestimate it. It's going to be a significant challenge. It's fair to say Kelsey's, obviously, he's retired. Juergen's had some issues last week. He's not the strongest guy in the world. He's a really good athlete. And Mekhi Becton, yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's interesting. The Eagles have done well against Lawrence, but on your point, they've done well with other guys in the lineup. So, yeah, this is a big deal. The key to me is protection. Now, what we didn't like is, and Greg Cosell told us this, because on our Inside the Tape show, which you can find on YouTube, it wasn't Barkley in the run game. It was Barkley didn't pass protect well. He had a couple of mistakes, one bad one. But in the run game, Mike, they just cannot open holes. That's a concern.
Adam, couple key stats I want to throw your way before we get out of here on this Football at 4 Friday. Giants allow 5.3 yards per rush, worst in the NFL. Obviously, that number begs for a big Barkley day. Do the Eagles want to, Boston Scott, that was the joke that they tried to get him touchdowns. Do they want to try to get Barkley a big game today, Sunday?
I don't see that, Mike. Now, obviously, if they have bad pass protection, they might have to become more of a running team. I mean, that could happen, and obviously Hurts can run it too. Jalen's looking better. I know it doesn't show in the yards per carry. He actually looks better lately running the football. Look, I am concerned though, Mike. That opened a can of worms last week when they could not create holes for Barkley. That's a concern. I'm glad you brought that up because that to me has to happen. Barkley, it really does get. Their offense does kind of get started with Barkley. Let's call it like it is. We know, obviously, they have two great receivers. But without Goddard, Mike, they got to get the running game going. They're not in a position right now that their passing game is good enough for it to carry it like it did in 22 where Hurts was incredible. So keep an eye on that.
Last one for you here. Giants allow 71% completion this year, third worst in the NFL. But, as you said, 26 sacks. That leads the league. 76 pressures. That's 6. So 71% completion percentage. Sound like there's plays to be made in the pass game, but they do get to the quarterback. So what gives here with this offensive line against that pass rush, but the ability for plays in the pass game seem to be there?
Yeah, and Ojulari is going to start for Thibodeau. He's the guy the Eagles have faced for many years. He's very athletic. He would be their third edge rusher. Now he's starting. You get concerned. Brian Burns on the other side. Brian Burns is a guy they've seen before with Carolina. Now he's with the Giants. And now the thing is, if you can protect Mike, you could throw against those corners. That's the thing is they're not giving up the big plays downfield. They did a great job last week against Joe Burrow. That surprised me. I picked the Bengals to handle that one. In fact, Mike, I went 11-3 against the number for Sports Grid. It's crazy. I picked so many favorites. The sports books got crushed last week. You watch this week, Mike, it's going to be the exact opposite.
All right, Adam Caplan, Football at 4. Make sure you check out the Inside the Birds podcast on all podcasting platforms, their YouTube channel, and all their content over at Inside the Birds. And Adam Caplan's back next week for Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. All right, Adam, appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you.
There's Adam on a Friday edition of the Sports Bash.